The woman's breath came in shallow gasps, her badge glinting under the broken streetlight as blood pooled beneath her head. Garrett Voss saw the badge first, then the torn uniform, then the terror in her eyes, and everything he'd been taught about cops and enemies dissolved in an instant. Before we start the story, tell us wherever you're watching from, tell us in the comments, what touched you most in this story? Garrett hadn't planned to be in that alley. He'd taken the side route through Belmont's industrial district to avoid the highway patrol checkpoint everyone was talking about at the clubhouse. The Hells Angels patch on his back made him a target for scrutiny, always had. But when his headlights swept across the crumpled figure near the dumpster, instinct took over. He killed the engine and dismounted, boots crunching on broken glass. Officer Mara Quinlan lay on her side, one arm twisted beneath her, radio shattered, service weapon gone. Her eyes fluttered open when his shadow fell over her. She tried to speak but only managed a wet cough. Garrett knelt, his leather creaking in the silence. This wasn't a random mugging. Someone had hunted her. Mara's lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear. He leaned closer. "Partner," she rasped, "set me up." Garrett's jaw tightened, betrayal from within, the worst kind. He glanced at the warehouse behind them, windows dark, no witnesses, no security cameras he could see. This was deliberate isolation. Someone knew she'd be here, someone wanted her dead. Mara's hand found his wrist, gripping weakly. "Don't leave." The plea cut through years of mutual hostility between his world and hers. Garrett had been arrested twice by Belmont PD. He'd been roughed up in holding cells, denied phone calls, treated like scum, but this woman bleeding in front of him wasn't the system. She was just human, dying, alone. He yanked off his vest and pressed it against the gash above her ear. Blood soaked through the leather immediately, warm and thick. Garrett's hands remembered pressure points from combat medic training he'd gotten years ago in the Marines, back before the dishonorable discharge and the long slide into club life. He worked methodically, checking her pulse, tilting her head to keep airways clear. Mara's breathing steadied slightly. "Stay with me," he muttered. "You don't get to check out in some dirty alley." She blinked, focusing on his face, on the tattoos crawling up his neck, on the Hells Angels insignia on his cut now stained with her blood. Recognition flickered. She'd probably pulled him over before, maybe arrested him. Maybe testified against his brothers. None of that mattered now. Her radio was destroyed and his phone had died 2 hours ago. No backup coming. Garrett made a decision. He scooped Mara up, cradling her against his chest. She weighed less than he expected, fragile despite the tactical vest and utility belt. Her head lolled against his shoulder, blood seeping into his shirt. He moved fast through the alley toward where his Harley sat waiting, every nerve screaming that this could end badly. If another cop saw him carrying an unconscious officer, they'd shoot first and ask questions never. If his own brothers saw him helping a cop, there'd be hell to pay. The club had rules, strict ones. But some things ran deeper than patches and politics. His little daughter, Emma, was 4 years old. If something ever happened to him, he'd want someone to help her, badge or no badge. He reached the bike and positioned Mara carefully across the seat, holding her upright with one arm while kick-starting the engine with his boot. The Harley roared to life, shattering the industrial silence. Mara's eyes opened briefly. "Hospital," Garrett said, throttling up. "Hang on." He didn't wait for permission. The bike lurched forward, tires gripping asphalt as he navigated the maze of side streets toward Belmont General. Wind whipped past them, cold against the sweat on his forehead. Mara's blood dripped onto the fuel tank, dark streaks in the dim glow of passing streetlights. Garrett ran 2 red lights and blew through a stop sign, praying no patrol car spotted them. Irony wasn't lost on him, breaking traffic laws to save a cop's life. His speedometer hit 70 in a 35 zone. The emergency room entrance blazed with fluorescent light as Garrett skidded to a stop, leaving rubber on the pavement. He killed the engine and hauled Mara off the bike, her weight sagging against him. "Help!" he shouted toward the glass doors. "Officer down!" 2 nurses burst through, followed by a security guard who froze at the sight of a heavily tattooed biker holding a bloodied cop. Garrett ignored the guard's hand, moving toward his radio. "She's been stabbed or beaten, head trauma, losing consciousness. Found her 15 minutes ago in the industrial district." The nurses didn't hesitate. They brought a gurney and Garrett laid Mara down gently. Her hand caught his wrist one last time. "Thank you," she whispered before they wheeled her away. Garrett stood there, chest heaving, hands covered in drying blood. The security guard approached cautiously. "You need to stay here, police are coming." Garrett nodded, too exhausted to run even if he wanted to. He slumped against the brick wall near the ambulance bay, watching his hands shake. Adrenaline crash, he'd seen it in combat, felt it after firefights overseas. Saving a life hit different than taking one. Within minutes, sirens wailed closer. 3 patrol cars screamed into the lot, officers spilling out with hands on weapons. Garrett raised his bloody palms slowly. "Easy, I'm the one who brought her in." A older sergeant approached, eyes scanning Garrett's vest lying bloody on the gurney, the Hells Angels insignia visible. "You Garrett Voss," the sergeant knew him. Everyone in Belmont PD knew the local chapter members. "Yeah." The sergeant's jaw worked like he was chewing gravel. "Tell me what happened, all of it." Garrett recounted the alley, the blood, Mara's whispered words about her partner setting her up. The sergeant's expression darkened. "Her partner's name is Dennis Keller. He called in a disturbance at that location, then went radio silent 20 minutes ago. Something clicked. Keller had lured Mara there." The sergeant pulled his radio, barking orders to find Keller immediately. Then he looked back at Garrett. "You could have left her, why didn't you?" Garrett met his eyes. "Because she's somebody's daughter, maybe somebody's mother. I got a kid. I'd want someone to help." The sergeant studied him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Tom Briggs, I was Marine Corps too, saw your ink." They shook, blood and all. More officers arrived as dawn broke gray over Belmont. Garrett stayed, giving statements, answering questions, enduring suspicious glares from younger cops who saw only his colors, but Sergeant Briggs kept them in check. "This man saved Quinlan's life, show some respect." Hours crawled past. Garrett called his club president, Reese, explaining the situation. Silence stretched on the other end. Then, "You did right, we'll handle any blowback." Relief flooded through Garrett. The club could have seen this as betrayal, helping law enforcement. But Reese understood the line between enemy and human being. Around noon, a surgeon emerged, still in scrubs. "Officer Quinlan is stable. Severe concussion, laceration, mild hypothermia. Another 30 minutes and she would have died from blood loss or exposure." The surgeon looked at Garrett. "You saved her life." Garrett absorbed the words but felt no pride, only quiet relief. Sergeant Briggs pulled him aside as other officers processed the news. "We found Keller, tried to flee to the state line, crashed his car, he's in custody." Briggs's voice dropped. "He's been skimming from evidence lockers, dealing confiscated drugs. Mara discovered it, confronted him. He tried to eliminate the problem." Garrett's hands curled into fists. "He left her to die in that alley like garbage." Briggs nodded grimly. "He'll never see daylight again, but Mara sees it because you stopped." The sergeant hesitated, then added, "I know there's bad blood between your world and ours, but what you did tonight? That's the kind of thing that reminds me we're all human underneath the uniforms and patches." Garrett had no response to that. 2 days passed before Mara was awake enough for visitors. Garrett showed up with coffee he didn't drink, pacing the hospital corridor like a caged animal. He'd never been comfortable in sterile places, too many memories of military hospitals, brothers who didn't make it home. A nurse finally waved him in. Mara sat propped against pillows, bandages wrapped around her head, bruises blooming purple across her cheekbone. She looked small without the uniform and gear. When she saw him, her eyes filled. "They told me you stayed all night, that you refused to leave until you knew I'd make it." Garrett shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Just did what anyone should have done." Mara shook her head slowly. "We both know that's not true. Most people would have kept writing." They sat in silence for a moment, the hospital machines beeping steadily. Finally, Mara spoke. "I remember your face from a traffic stop 2 years ago. I gave you a ticket for expired registration." Garrett almost smiled. "Yeah, I called you some choice words under my breath." She laughed, then winced from the pain. "I heard them, didn't care, it was my job." Her expression sobered. "But you saved my life anyway, even knowing I was someone who'd arrested your friends, who'd made your life harder." Garrett looked at his scarred knuckles. "My daughter Emma asked me last week what heroes look like. I told her they don't always wear capes, sometimes they just show up when it matters." He met Mara's eyes. "You've shown up for this town every day, that counted for something." Mara reached for the cup of water on her bedside table, hands trembling. Garrett helped her, steadying the cup. Dennis and I were partners for 3 years, she said quietly. I trusted him with my life. Turns out he was already planning to take it. The betrayal sat heavy in the room. Garrett understood betrayal. He'd lost Marine brothers to friendly fire, lost club members to informants. Trust was currency in his world, and Mara had just learned how expensive broken trust could be. Briggs told me Dennis is done. They found enough evidence to bury him twice over. Mara nodded, but tears tracked down her cheeks. I keep thinking about how stupid I was. The signs were there, I just didn't want to believe someone I cared about could do that. Garrett pulled a chair closer, sitting down heavily. Believing in people isn't stupid. It's what keeps us human. Dennis made his choices, that's on him, not you. They talked until visiting hours ended, about life and loss and the strange paths that bring strangers together. Mara told him about her younger sister who'd overdosed on fentanyl 3 years ago, how she became a cop to fight the dealers destroying families. Garrett told her about Emma's mother leaving when Emma was 6 months old, how the club helped him raise his daughter when he had nowhere else to turn. Two people from opposite sides of the law finding common ground in shared pain and unexpected grace. When Garrett stood to leave, Mara caught his hand. I owe you everything if there's ever anything. There's nothing to owe, Garrett interrupted gently. You'd have done the same for me. Mara studied his face, searching for truth, and found it. Yeah, I would've. He left before the moment could get heavier, walking through hospital corridors that smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. Outside, the November air bit cold against his face. His Harley sat in visitor parking, still stained with Mara's blood on the tank. He'd clean it later. Right now, he needed to pick up Emma from his mother's house, hold his daughter close, and remember why moments like these mattered. The news had spread through Belmont like wildfire, a Hell's Angel saving a cop's life. Local paper ran a front-page story. TV crews camped outside the clubhouse until Reese told them to leave. Garrett hated the attention. 3 weeks later, the Belmont Police Department held a small ceremony. Garrett didn't want to attend, but Mara called personally, her voice still carrying the rasp from that night. Please, it matters to me. So he showed up in his cleanest jeans and his Hell's Angels cut, feeling every hostile stare from the old guard cops who'd never forget his record. But younger officers nodded respect as he passed. Sergeant Briggs presented him with a civilian commendation for life-saving action. The chief of police, a stern woman named Helena Cross, shook his hand firmly. You remind us that character isn't defined by affiliation. It's defined by choices in critical moments. Mara stood beside her, back in uniform, eyes bright. After the ceremony, she walked Garrett to his bike. They're assigning me a new partner, Mara said, leaning against a patrol car. Rookie named Simmons, eager, green, probably terrified of me now. Garrett smirked. You've got a reputation, cop who was saved by a biker, that's not standard training material. She laughed, the sound lighter than before. No, it's not. But maybe it should be. Maybe we all need reminding that people are complex. That someone wearing your colors can have more integrity than someone wearing mine. They stood in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across a pale sky. Emma wants to meet you, Garrett said suddenly. She saw the newspaper article, keeps asking about the brave police lady. Mara's eyes softened. I'd like that, maybe we could grab ice cream or something normal. Normal. The word felt foreign and perfect. The following Saturday, Garrett brought Emma to Belmont Park. She was a whirlwind of energy, pigtails bouncing as she ran toward the swings. Mara arrived in civilian clothes, jeans, a sweater, no badge visible. Emma stared at her with wide eyes. You're really her? Mara knelt down to Emma's level. I'm really her, and your dad's a real hero. Emma beamed, then hugged Mara fiercely. Something cracked in Garrett's chest watching them. Two parts of his life he'd never imagined intersecting, now sharing ice cream and laughter on wooden benches. Mara pushed Emma on the swings while Garrett watched, feeling lighter than he had in years. Later, as the sun dipped low, Emma fell asleep in Garrett's arms. Mara walked them to his bike. Thank you for today. Thank you for giving her someone to look up to, Garrett replied. She needs good examples, better ones than me. Mara shook her head firmly. She needs exactly who you are, a father who shows up, a man who does right when it's hard. That's everything? In the months that followed, something shifted in Belmont. The Hells Angels chapter and the police department maintained professional distance, but the hostility cooled. Officers stopped harassing club members over minor infractions. Club members stopped escalating every interaction. Not peace exactly, but understanding, mutual respect born from one man's choice in a dark alley. Garrett and Mara stayed in touch, occasional coffee, updates about Emma, conversations about life. Nothing romantic, just two people who'd seen each other's humanity in impossible circumstances and refused to forget it. One evening, Garrett sat on his porch watching Emma draw pictures with sidewalk chalk. Reese stopped by with beer, settling into the other chair. "You know the whole club talks about what you did, right? Like legend status." Garrett shrugged. "I just didn't let someone die." Reese was quiet for a moment. "That's the point. You could've, most would've, you chose different. That choice matters more than you know." Garrett watched Emma draw a stick figure with a motorcycle and a stick figure with a badge holding hands under a rainbow. She'd titled it Friends. Maybe she understood better than any adult that underneath leather and uniforms, past patches and protocols, people were just people, flawed, scared, capable of both terrible and beautiful things. And sometimes, in alleyways and hospital rooms, humanity won. Garrett never asked for recognition, never wanted headlines or ceremonies. He just wanted to live knowing he'd made the right choice when it counted. Mara recovered fully, carrying the scar as a reminder that angels sometimes wore unexpected faces. If this story touched something in you, consider subscribing and joining our family, because these stories matter and so does the community that keeps them alive.